The desert night held its breath. Stars burned like stray embers above the black spine of the ridge. Wind moved slow through creosote and thorn, the kind of wind that listened. He heard the first footstep before she did. Cain Ellery did not turn his head. He kept his palm near the colt at his hip and let the silence tell him more. One step, another, soft, measured, not a drunk, not a child, someone who knew how to borrow the dark. A flick of flint, a bead of fire kissed the tip of a match. Her face came alive in orange light. She cupped it from the wind and touched it to a twist of kindling. The flame took. A small circle of warmth grew between them. The night retreated an inch. She did not startle when he finally looked up. She met his eyes like a rider meeting a river. Brave, wary, beautiful the way the desert is beautiful. More edges than roses. "You followed me," he said. "I hired you," she answered. "Following comes with the price." Her name was Josie Marlowe. The name tasted like whiskey when he said it, though he had not yet said it out loud. She wore a faded teal dress that had once belonged to a softer life. Boots scuffed by miles, a scarf the color of storm water tied at her throat. No ring, no apology. He set his coffee tin near the fire. The tin had dents like old stories. He had more dents than the tin. "You should have waited at the trailhead," he said. "And invite the men behind me to catch up," she said. "I think not." He watched the flame paint her cheekbones. She carried fear like a lantern, not bright, not clumsy, just enough to see the ground. "How many?" he asked. "2 for sure, maybe 3. One whistles through his teeth when he breathes. Another drags his left boot. The third sounds small, young or careful. You listen well, Josie. Care taught me. Care and nights like this. A coyote called far off. The sound was thin and aching. The fire popped and sent a single spark skyward. He could smell rain somewhere that was not here. He could smell gunpowder too, but that might have been memory. "Tell me again where you are going," he said. "South, past the railroad grade, across the dry wash. There is a town that keeps its lamps low. Esperanza. They say a woman can disappear inside it and come out someone else. They say many things about towns with names like that. Do you know it? I know the road to it. I know the men who guard the easier ways and the ghosts that wait on the harder ones." Her mouth made the shadow of a smile. "Ghosts do not frighten me, Mr. Ellery." "Then what does?" "Promises," she said. The words sank between them, heavy as a horseshoe, light as dust. He poured coffee into a tin cup and offered it. She wrapped both hands around the warmth. Her fingers were nicked from thorns. Her nails carried a fine pale moon of grit. Her throat moved when she drank. He looked away and pretended to study the map of stars. "You ride as if the horse is part of you," she said. "It used to be part of me. Then a winter cut it loose. I learned to be a man again. That winter still with you. Most winters stay." Her eyes softened. "Mine too," she said. He did not ask which winter she meant. He did not ask about the men who taught her to count by breath and boot drag. Questions can be knives. Answers can be worse. They ate in quiet. Jerky broke under their teeth like dry wood. He passed her a slice of dried peach. She let it sit on her tongue a moment before she chewed. Sweetness found the firelight and grew bolder. The first hour of night settled deep. The moon edged up, thin as a white scar. A horse snorted out beyond the brush. Cain did not move. Josie did not spill her cup. "You heard that too," she said. "Yes. Are they close? Close enough to smell our flame if the wind shifts wrong? Close enough to make real choices?" He stood, slow, and kicked sand across the fire. The light died with a sigh. The stars walked nearer. The cold stepped in like a careful thief. He waited until his eyes found the night again. "Pack your tin," he said. "We ride now." She strapped the tin and the jerky pouch to a worn satchel. She moved with a grace that came from hard lessons, not dance floors. When she cinched the strap across her shoulder, her breath caught a fraction. He saw it. He pretended not to. "You are hurt," he said. "It will not slow me. Show me." She hesitated. Then she lifted the skirt to the knee. A strip of linen wrapped her calf. Fresh blood had bled through and dried. The scent of iron touched the air. "Thorn," she said. "Or a nail. I did not stop to learn its name." He crouched and examined the wrap without touching her. The skin around it was warm. He could feel the heat in the cold. He did not like that heat. "We should clean it," he said. "We do not have time. We take time. Or the road will take you." The wind shifted then. He caught the ghost of tobacco. Cheap. Harsh. The kind men smoke when they have no home but the hunt. He met her eyes. "They are nearer," she whispered. "Yes." But then she whispered something else. A small thing. A true thing. "I am not running from them, Cain. I am running toward something." He nodded. "That matters." He led her to the horses. His was a dark roan that carried the night on its back. Hers was a bay with a white star like a thumbprint on its brow. He lifted her stirrup and checked the cinch. His fingers brushed her boot. Heat spoke up again. Not the heat of fever this time. He handed her a canteen. "Rinse the wound. Change the wrap. I will watch the ridge. I can do it alone," she said. "I know. You do not have to." She looked at him a long breath. She sat on a fallen trunk and unwound the linen. The night air kissed the red line on her leg. She hissed, barely. She poured water. She set her jaw. He kept his eyes on the ridge and counted stars to give her privacy. 10, 20, 30. A faint whistle drifted down the slope. Teeth threw breath. The sound she had described, real, closer. She tied the new wrap and stood. He saw steadiness return to her shoulders. She handed back the canteen. "Thank you," she said. "You paid me," he said. "I paid you to guide me, not to care. Maybe it was both." He mounted the roan. She swung into the bay's saddle, favoring the opposite stirrup. The horses shifted and listened. He touched 2 fingers to the brim of his hat and pointed south. "We will cut the dry wash before the moon lifts higher," he said. "Keep the star on your left shoulder. It will steer you if my voice cannot. And if we lose each other, we will not." They rode. Hooves found the soft line between stones. Brush combed their boots. The night opened like a gate. He set a pace that would not break her wound. She kept up because she had decided to, not because her body agreed. A mile fell behind them. Then another. The smell of tobacco faded. The whistle did not follow. Only the sound of their breathing and the pulse of leather and grit. The land rolled out a quiet welcome, the kind you only hear after danger steps back a little. They reached the edge of the wash. The sand there was pale as old bone. The moon had climbed. A thin crease of cloud drifted over it and broke. He reined in and held up his hand. She stopped beside him. "Look," he said. Far across the dark, a string of lamps floated low on the horizon. A town with its light kept down, quiet as a secret. Esperanza sleeping with one eye open. Her breath eased. Hope put a small weight in his chest. Not heavy, just present. "We will make it by dawn," she said. "If the road stays kind." Does it ever? Sometimes the road tries. Tonight it might. He took a slow breath and listened for the ridge again. Only wind and the far cry of another coyote. He felt the old ache that came each time he let someone close enough to trust him. He did not fight it. Some aches remind you are alive. If this fire has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay near the sound of our hoofbeats. The night still has more to tell. Like, share, or leave a word in the dust if you have ever ridden towards something your fear could not name. They turned their horses toward the low lamps and began the descent, the wash whispering below like a promise that would carry them to the next place. The wash was deep enough to swallow a whisper. Sand shifted under the horses' hooves with a slow sigh, and every sound felt too loud. The moon hid itself behind a torn veil of cloud, leaving the world silver-grey and uncertain. Cain Ellery rode ahead, every sense sharpened. He knew the rhythm of pursuit, how silence could turn into danger faster than a heartbeat. He glanced back once. Josie Marlowe followed close, her face pale in the half-light, her hand steady on the reins. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "Running?" "Riding like a shadow." She gave a breath of a laugh. "Shadows don't bleed." Cain didn't answer. His gaze swept the dunes beyond the wash, the kind that hid men and memories both. After a long while, Josie spoke again. "How far until the next water?" "There's an old station house 2 miles south. Used to serve the rail before the tracks got washed out. Might still have a well." "Might?" He smiled, just a corner of his mouth. "The desert likes its maybes." They rode in quiet until the shape of the building appeared. Broken roof, one wall leaning like it had lost an argument with time. A lantern still hung near the door, rusted and swaying in the wind. Cain dismounted first and walked his roan close to the wall. He touched the handle of the door, pushed gently. It creaked open like a groan from the past. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint sweetness of old wood. 2 bunks, a cracked stove, a table with a single bullet hole in the middle. "Wait here," Cain said. Josie slid down from her horse and tied the reins to a post. "You think someone's here?" "I think I'd rather be sure." He drew the colt and moved through the room, slow, steady, boots whispering against the floorboards. No sound but the wind and the steady beat of his breath. He checked the back door, the corner behind the stove, the small lean-to at the rear. Empty, only a pile of broken bottles and a nest of feathers. When he returned, Josie had found a lantern that still worked and was coaxing it to life. Flame bloomed soft and amber, painting the dust in gold. "Seems like home," she said with a faint smile. He leaned against the table. "You've had worse homes, I bet." "Plenty, but at least this one doesn't lie." Cain tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Walls that stand tell you what they are." "Men don't always." The words hung between them. He wanted to ask who had taught her that, but he already knew the answer didn't need saying. He crossed to the old well outside. The crank still turned, though the rope groaned like it hurt to remember work. A bucket came up half full, the water cold and clean. When he brought it inside, Josie was sitting by the stove, her injured leg stretched out, unwrapping the bandage. "Let me," he said. "I can manage." "I know. Still, let me." She hesitated, then nodded. He knelt beside her. The firelight traced her calf, pale beneath the linen. The wound had opened a little from the ride. He poured water over it, gentle as rain, and the dust washed away. She winced once, then stilled. He tore a strip from his own undershirt and bound the wound fresh. "This'll hold," he murmured. Her eyes were close to his, too close. "You always this kind to strangers, Mr. Ellery?" "Only the dangerous ones." She smiled, soft and tired. "Then I should warn you. I'm worse than I look." "I already figured that." The wind shifted outside, and a shutter slammed open against the wall. Both of them turned their heads at once. Cain stood, drew the Colt again, and went to the window. Nothing moved, just sand crawling over stone. "You think they're still following?" she asked. "Not think. Know." Josie drew a slow breath. "Then they want me more than they want to live." Cain turned back to her. "You still haven't told me what's in Esperanza." "A man," she said. "Or what's left of one. Someone you lost. Someone I need to see end." Her tone was quiet, even, like a confession to the dark. Cain watched her eyes, steady, cold and hurting. He saw the truth of it. Revenge had its own heartbeat, and it never slept. He sat across from her. "I don't kill for pay anymore, Josie." "I didn't ask you to." "Then what do you want from me?" She looked at him a long while before answering. "To make sure I don't lose myself when it's done." The words found something deep in him, a place he'd buried long ago, where another woman's name had once lived. He looked away. "That's a harder job than killing." "I know," she said softly. "That's why you're here." Outside, thunder rolled across the plain, the kind that promised a storm without mercy. Cain walked to the doorway and looked up. The sky was bruised purple and gold, clouds coiling like smoke. "Rain'll come soon," he said. "The wash'll flood fast. We'll need to move before it hits." Josie rose and began packing their things. "Then let's ride." He turned once more toward the horizon. The lamps of Esperanza still glimmered faintly through the storm haze, like promises that didn't know if they were worth keeping. As they mounted, lightning flashed, sharp and white. The wind carried the echo of a whistle, thin, high, and much too near. Cain looked at Josie. "They found the trail." She gripped the reins tighter. "Then we don't stop." He nodded, and together they spurred into the rising wind. The desert opened wide before them, dark and alive. The first drops of rain hit the brim of his hat. The scent of wet dust rose around them, clean, electric, fierce. Somewhere behind, gunpowder waited for its turn. If this story has found a heartbeat in you, ride with them through the storm. The desert hasn't spoken its last word yet. The thunder followed them south, toward Esperanza, and toward the next reckoning beneath the western sky. The rain came like spilled glass, sudden, cold, relentless. Cain Ellery pulled his hat low as the horses fought for footing through the wash. The sound of hooves drowned beneath the hammer of water. Mud clung to the bay's legs, and Josie Marlowe leaned forward, whispering to calm the animal. They crested a rise where the earth turned rocky and slick. Lightning cracked open the sky and showed the world in pieces. The broken trail, the dead mesquite, the outline of a man on the ridge behind them. Cain's hand went to his Colt. "Keep riding," he said. "I saw him," Josie whispered. "Then you know we can't stop." Gunfire split the storm. A spark flashed near her stirrup. The horses jumped, half blind in the downpour. Cain fired back once, a single round aimed to remind, not to kill. The figure fell away into shadow. They rode hard for another half-mile before Cain signaled a stop beneath a narrow overhang of stone. Rain hissed down in sheets beyond the lip. The space barely fit both horses and their riders. "Who are they?" he asked, breath heavy. "Men who used to call him brother," she said. "The one in Esperanza." Her eyes didn't waver. "I ran with them once, until I saw what they truly were." "And what's that?" "Hunters without mercy." Cain holstered the Colt, but didn't relax. "They won't stop, Josie." "I know." "They think I took something that belongs to them." He turned toward her. "Did you?" She didn't answer at once. Rain hammered the rocks like a drum. Finally she said, "A ledger. Names, routes, what they stole, who they sold it to, men in suits back east, not bandits. The kind of secrets that hang people in daylight." Cain exhaled slow. "And you plan to use it in Esperanza?" "I plan to burn it there, with the man who kept it." The firelight in her eyes wasn't from any flame. It was a slow, steady burn of will. He recognized it. The look of someone who'd lost too much to turn back. He drew closer. "If this man dies, what happens to you?" "Maybe I finally stop running. Or maybe you start again, just without a map." For a moment only Rain spoke. Then Josie laughed, low and tired, a sound that broke something soft in the storm. "You talk like someone who's already buried his ghosts." He looked past her shoulder. "They don't bury easy out here." Lightning showed her face again, hair plastered to her cheek, water tracing the line of her throat. The sight struck something in him he didn't name. She met his gaze and didn't look away. "Why are you helping me, Cain?" He thought of the winters he'd survived, the faces that faded with them. "Because once, someone should have helped me, and didn't." The storm began to thin, the rain softening into a mist. He moved to the edge of the overhang and watched the clouds break apart. A single beam of moonlight slipped through. The air smelled of wet sage and iron. Behind him, Josie's voice was quiet. "You could leave now. Take your horse, ride north, forget my name." "Could," he said, "but I won't." "Why not?" "Because I've already said it. in my head. And names have weight. Her lips parted as if to answer, but something in his tone stopped her. The night exhaled. The storm crawled east, taking its anger with it. He stepped out into the open, turned his face to the cooling rain, and closed his eyes. Josie joined him. She tilted her head back, let the drops hit her skin, washing dust and blood away. For a heartbeat she looked like something reborn, wild, untamed, alive. Cain felt the pull between them, heat under the chill, want wrapped in silence. He didn't reach for her. Not yet. The desert didn't need witnesses for that kind of honesty. When she opened her eyes again, they had changed, softer, but deeper too. "What happens when we reach Esperanza?" she asked. "Depends on what you find there. And if it's not what I hoped," he looked at her, voice low, "then you'll still have the road, and maybe someone willing to ride a while longer." The wind eased. The horses stamped and snorted, restless. Cain ran a hand over the roan's neck. "We move at dawn," he said. "Then we rest till then." She spread a blanket near the fire pit and sat, her back against the stone. He stayed standing for a long time, listening to the slow rhythm of her breathing, the whisper of wind drying the last of the rain. When he finally sat across from her, their eyes met again. No words passed. Just the quiet understanding of two souls too tired to pretend. Outside, the desert glittered under the wet moonlight, every drop a small star reborn from the storm. If you've felt the hush that comes after thunder, stay close. The night has not finished what it started, and neither have they. The rain faded, and with it the world held its breath for the next reckoning under the western dawn. Dawn came pale and quiet, brushing the desert in strokes of gold and grey. Cain Ellery was already awake, leaning against the saddle, coffee tin in hand. The smell of wet earth still lingered from the storm, and for a moment the world felt almost forgiving. Josie Marlowe stirred beneath her blanket. Her hair caught the first light, like a flame refusing to die. She blinked once, twice, then sat up, clutching the shawl around her shoulders. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "I did, with my eyes open." She smiled faintly. "Habit or fear?" "Doesn't matter. Both keep a man breathing." He handed her the tin. "Drink before it cools. You'll need it." She took it, fingers brushing his. The warmth passed between them, brief, real. "You always take care of the people you guide like this?" "No, just the ones who make the night quiet." Her gaze lingered on him a beat too long before she looked away. The desert stretched wide and endless, the sky painted with the promise of heat. Somewhere beyond those ridges waited Esperanza, and the man she'd come to find. "Cain," she said, breaking the silence, "you ever wonder what you'd be if you hadn't come west?" He thought about that, about the river towns, the faces that had faded, the gunfights that had built the man she was asking about. "I'd still be running," he said. "Only from a different kind of ghost," she nodded. "Seems we have that in common." They saddled the horses and rode south, leaving the ruined station behind. The land shifted under them, sand giving way to rock, the color deepening from wheat to rust. The sun climbed higher, and the air shimmered. Around midday, Cain raised a hand. "Hold up!" Josie reined her horse. "What is it?" He slid down, crouched near a patch of disturbed ground. Boot prints. 3 sets. Heavy. Recent. "They passed here after the rain," he said. "That means they're close." She swallowed hard. Yours or mine? Does it matter? Only if one of them is the man I used to love. Cain's eyes lifted. You said you were running from monsters, Josie, not ghosts. Her face tightened. Sometimes they're the same. He studied her a long moment. Tell me his name. Reeves. Daniel Reeves. The name left her mouth like a wound reopening. Cain remembered it, faintly. A man once known along the border, fast with a gun, faster with betrayal. You rode with Reeves? I believed him, she said quietly, and that might be worse. Her hand went to the satchel tied to her saddle, the one with the ledger. He doesn't want me dead yet. He wants this back. Cain nodded. Then we use it to bring him to us. Josie looked at him sharply. You'd risk that? He adjusted his hat, eyes on the horizon. Sometimes you stop running by turning around. They made camp early in the shadow of a red bluff. Cain gathered brush for a small fire, the kind that wouldn't betray them with too much smoke. Josie sat close, her fingers worrying the edge of the ledger's leather cover. You ever think about what peace looks like? She asked. He poked the fire with a stick. I've seen it once or twice. Never held it long. For me, it's a porch somewhere quiet, the smell of coffee, someone who doesn't ask where I've been. Sounds like a dream. It's not, she said. It's just far. The wind shifted again. He caught the faint scent of tobacco, sharp, cheap, familiar, the same from before. They're near, he murmured. Josie's hand went to her revolver. How near? He stood. Close enough to wait until dark. The sun dipped, and with it came the sound of hooves. Not many, maybe 2. Cain motioned for her to stay low. He stepped into the open, shadow long against the firelight. A voice called out from the dark. Evening, Ellery. Cain's fingers twitched near his gun. Didn't think you'd remember me. A figure stepped into the firelight. Reeves. Hat tilted, smile too easy. The rain had washed him clean, but not enough to hide the dirt in his soul. Hard man to forget, Reeves said. Didn't expect to find you playing guide to my girl. She stopped being your anything the minute she ran. Reeves' eyes flicked past Cain toward Josie. You tell him what's in that book, darling, or you're still pretending you're doing the Lord's work. Josie stood slowly, her revolver aimed steady. You think the Lord walks this land, Reeves? He grinned. No, but I do. Cain stepped between them. You got no claim here. Reeves's smile faded. I got a bullet with her name on it. You can stand in the way if you want. It'll just take 2. Cain's voice stayed low, even. You've had your warning. Reeves chuckled. Still talk like a preacher. Still shoot like one too. Lightning cracked again, this time without rain. The sound echoed off the bluff like judgment coming early. Cain's hand hovered near the Colt. Reeves mirrored him. The air tightened, every second drawn thin as wire. Then Josie's voice cut through. Don't! Both men froze. This isn't the place, she said. Not yet. Cain's jaw flexed. Reeves smirked, lowering his gun first. She's right. Esperanza's where this ends. He backed away into the dark, his voice carrying like a promise. See you at sunrise, preacher. Cain didn't breathe until the sound of hooves faded into the wind. Josie's shoulders sagged. He'll wait for us. Cain holstered his gun. Good. Then he'll die tired. She looked at him, eyes shining in the firelight. You'd really see this through? He nodded. All the way. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, I don't deserve that. He looked at her, his voice rough. None of us do. The wind eased, carrying away the last trace of Reeves's laughter. The night went still again, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. If you've ever felt that breath before the storm, stay close. Their road runs straight into the fire, and there's no turning back from here. The firelight flickered low, and beyond it the desert whispered the promise of dawn, and the reckoning waiting in Esperanza. The dawn came red, the kind that warned before it warmed. Cain Ellery watched the sun crawl over the ridge, painting everything the colour of old wounds. Josie Marlowe stood beside her horse, tightening the cinch with steady hands, though her eyes looked far away, toward Esperanza, where the road curved like a question neither of them wanted to answer. You sure about this? Cain asked quietly. I've been sure since the day I ran, she said. Her voice carried that old ache again, the kind that comes from remembering what it cost to survive. He didn't press her. Some stories are too raw to speak before daylight. They rode without talking for hours. The land flattened into a long stretch of pale sand, broken only by mesquite and bone-white stones. The heat rose early, shimmering like ghosts above the ground. Cain's horse snorted, uneasy. They're still following, he said. Josie didn't turn. Then we keep going. Reeves won't stop till he's had his say. Then I'll give him mine. He studied her profile, calm, determined, beautiful in that hard-edged way the desert loves best. You plan to kill him? I plan to stop him, she said. However it takes. The words came out like a vow, not a threat. By midday, they reached the dry basin north of Esperanza. Cain called a halt beneath the shade of a jagged outcrop. He tied the horses and handed Josie a canteen. We rest here. You'll need your strength when we ride in. She drank, then wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. You talk like a man expecting a fight. I've learned to expect them when devils start using first names. She laughed softly, though it didn't reach her eyes. You think he'll come alone? No, he'll want a witness. He'll want someone to see him win. Cain checked his rifle and wiped the dust from its stock. The sound of the metal, the slow click of the chamber, it calmed him the way prayer might calm another man. Josie sat beside him. You ever wish you'd been born somewhere else? Somewhere with rain that didn't hurt to touch? He smiled faintly. Yeah, but then I wouldn't have met you. That silenced her. The wind carried their words away, leaving only the sound of leather creaking, of breath and heartbeats and heat. He turned to her. You said you wanted to burn that ledger. You still sure? Yes. Even if it's your only proof? Some things aren't meant to be kept, she said. They're meant to be finished. Cain nodded slowly. He understood. A man could live half a life trying to bury what burned him, but it always found air again. They rode the last miles as the light turned amber. Esperanza rose from the desert like an illusion, small, half dead, yet somehow still standing. a saloon, a church with no steeple, 3 rows of houses leaning into the wind. Josie looked at it and whispered, "It feels smaller than I remembered." "Everything does when you come back to bury it." They tied their horses behind the abandoned livery. The town was quiet, only the creak of a hanging sign breaking the stillness. Cain's boots crunched on the dust. Josie followed, her hand close to her gun. At the edge of the main street stood Reeves, waiting as promised, a black hat dusted with sun and that easy grin that used to fool the world. 2 of his men flanked him, their rifles slung casual. "Well, there's the preacher and the prodigal," Reeves called. "I was starting to think you'd lost your way." Cain didn't answer. He stopped 5 paces away, the heat between them heavy as breath. "You don't have to do this," Josie said. "Oh, I do," Reeves said. "You took something that wasn't yours." "I took back my life," he laughed. "You think the desert lets you do that? You can run till the sun falls, Josie." "It'll still own you." Cain stepped forward. "You've said enough." Reeves's eyes flicked toward him. "Funny thing, Ellery. You always looked like a man who'd forgotten what side he's on." "I remember. I'm on hers." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Reeves lifted his gun. The world narrowed to the sound of wind and heartbeat and the slow tightening of fingers. The first shot came from nowhere. A crack that split the air. Reeves staggered back, clutching his arm. His men dove for cover, firing wild into the dust. Cain dropped to one knee, returning fire with deadly precision. Josie grabbed the ledger from her satchel and threw it into the saloon fire pit nearby. The flame caught fast, pages curling, names turning to ash. Reeves saw and screamed, stumbling toward her. Cain moved faster. 1 shot, then silence. Reeves fell face first into the dust, the desert swallowing his last word. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the crackle of burning paper. Josie stood staring at the flames. "It's done," she whispered. Cain walked to her, holstering his gun. "You sure?" Her eyes filled, though no tears fell. "I don't know." He reached out, brushed the soot from her cheek with his thumb. "Then we'll find out together." She looked up at him, something breaking open in her face. Relief, grief, maybe love. "You still think there's peace left for people like us?" "I think there's quiet. Sometimes that's enough." She leaned into him, just enough for her breath to find his shoulder. The desert wind shifted, warm again, almost kind. The fire burned low, carrying the last of Reeves and the ledger into the darkening sky. If this story has found a spark in your chest, stay with them. The desert hasn't finished what it started, and neither has love. As night gathered over Esperanza, Cain took Josie's hand, and together they stepped into the glow of the dying fire, where every ending still held room for something new. The night in Esperanza came soft, but it wasn't gentle. Wind moved through the empty streets like a memory that wouldn't rest. The saloon fire had burned down to embers, and the desert smelled of smoke and rain that never came. Cain Ellery sat on the porch of the livery, his hat tilted low, his gun cleaned and holstered beside him. The weight in his chest wasn't victory. It was silence, the kind that follows when everything you've been running from finally stops chasing. Josie Marlowe stood by the fire pit, staring into the last coals. The red light touched her face, caught the tear tracks that hadn't dried yet. She hadn't said a word since Reeves fell. Cain finally spoke. "You should rest." "I can't." He nodded, understanding. Killing don't end something. It just changes what haunts you. She looked over her shoulder. "You sound like a man who's tried." "I am." She came closer, her boots soft in the dust. "Do you ever stop seeing them?" "The ones you put in the ground?" "Sometimes," he said quietly, "when I'm with someone who reminds me I'm still alive." The words hung there, caught between the crackle of dying fire and the low moan of the wind. Josie knelt beside him. "I didn't mean for you to get pulled into this." He turned to her. "I chose to ride with you." "Why?" He studied her, the scar on her lip, the tired strength in her eyes. "Because you looked like someone worth saving." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I was trying to save you too." For a long moment, neither spoke. The world around them faded to the sound of breath and heartbeats. Then Cain reached out, slow and sure, his fingers brushing a loose strand of her hair. "You can stop running now," he said. She leaned closer. "And if I don't know how?" "Then I'll teach you." He drew her in, his hand resting lightly against her back. The kiss that found them wasn't wild. It was slow, searching, built from everything they'd survived. The kind of kiss that didn't ask for more, just promised not to leave. When it broke, she stayed close, her forehead resting against his. "You shouldn't care for me, Cain. Too late. People near me get hurt." He smiled, tired and true. "I've been hurt before. You're different." The silence after that wasn't empty. It was full, of things neither could name, of peace that felt borrowed but real. Josie stood and walked to the edge of the porch. The desert stretched out in every direction, vast and unknowable. "What now?" she asked. Cain rose beside her. "Now we bury the past." They spent the next hour digging at the edge of town, beneath the single mesquite that still had green leaves. They buried Reeves where the ground was soft enough to take him, and Cain stacked stones above the grave. When it was done, Josie whispered, "I thought I'd feel free." "You will," Cain said. "But freedom don't come all at once. It starts small, like breath." She nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Oh, then maybe I'll start breathing again tomorrow." He touched her shoulder, gentle. "Tomorrow starts now." The night deepened. The stars came out, bright and endless. The kind of sky that could make a soul feel small and seen all at once. Josie turned to him. "Will you stay till morning?" He met her gaze. "I'll stay as long as the night needs." She exhaled, relief threading through the tired lines of her face. "Then maybe I can finally sleep." Cain followed her back to the livery. They spread their blankets near the fire. For the first time, she lay without her gun within reach. He noticed, but said nothing. As she drifted toward sleep, she murmured, "You think the desert ever forgives us?" He looked into the fading coals. "No, but sometimes it forgets, and that's close enough." Her breathing slowed, steady. Cain stayed awake a while longer, listening to the quiet. Outside, a single coyote called, far and lonely, then went silent. Cain's eyes found the horizon. He thought about the road ahead, about peace, and the rare souls who made it worth chasing. He looked down at Josie, asleep beside the dying fire, and something warm stirred in him, small and certain. If this story has found the quiet place inside you that still believes in mercy, stay close. The dawn will come, and with it, a promise neither of them saw coming. The wind rose again, carrying the scent of sage through Esperanza, whispering that the story was not yet done, and love had more to learn beneath the western sky. Dawn bled slowly over Esperanza, pale gold through the cracks of broken shutters, the color of forgiveness that hadn't yet decided to stay. Cain Ellery woke before the light touched the floor. He always did. Years of riding and running had taught him to trust the silence between night and morning, the thin hour when the world might still change its mind. Josie Marlowe stirred beside the dying fire. Her hair was tangled, her breath slow and human in a way the desert almost forgot how to be. Cain watched her for a moment, not out of hunger, but gratitude. She was alive, and that meant he was too. When she opened her eyes, she found him watching. "You don't sleep much," she said softly. "Sleep, and I made an understanding," he said. "It don't wait for me anymore." She smiled, small, genuine. "Then you need someone to remind you how." Cain stood, poured the last of their water into a tin cup, and handed it to her. "You did enough reminding last night." A blush touched her cheeks. She looked down. "You regret it?" He shook his head. "Only the years I didn't have it." For a long time, the silence was tender. Then reality crept back, steady as the sun. The fire was ash, their canteen half empty, and a road still stretched out before them, dust and danger waiting to be named. Josie sat up, wrapping her shawl tighter. "You think someone will come looking for Reeves?" "Maybe," Cain said. "Men like him don't die without stirring a few debts." "Then we should leave." "We will, but not without saying goodbye to what's buried here." He led her to the edge of town, where the stones still marked Reeves' grave. The wind had already begun to erase the tracks, softening everything but the truth. Josie crouched, touched one of the stones. "He was the first man I ever believed in," she said quietly. "And the last one you needed to," Cain answered. Her eyes lifted. "What does that make you?" He took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. "Just the one who showed up after." A faint smile curved her lips. "Then maybe that's exactly who I needed." He didn't reply, but something eased inside him, the kind of ease that didn't ask for words. They rode south, the desert rolling open again. Every mile felt lighter, as if the land itself was loosening its grip on them. Somewhere beyond those ridges, Cain knew, lay the next piece of peace. Not a destination, but a choice. By midday, they found an abandoned ranch, a windmill creaking, a trough half full, a porch still standing against the years. Cain led the horses to water, then looked toward the small house. "We can stay here a night or two," he said. Josie dismounted slowly, her leg still stiff from the wound. "Feels almost like a home," she said. "Careful," he warned with a hint of a smile. "The desert hears words like that." Inside, dust hung in the air like memory. A table, 2 chairs, a bed with one post broken. She traced her hand along the wall, the grain of the wood catching on her fingertips. "Someone loved this place once," she said. "Then let's not ruin the ghost of it," Cain answered. They unpacked, lit a small fire in the hearth. Josie found a can of beans and a bottle of whiskey under the counter. She raised the bottle, smiling. "Looks like the desert forgave us after all." He chuckled. "Or it's testing us." They ate in quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't need filling. Outside, the windmill creaked like a slow lullaby. Later, Josie sat on the porch steps, watching the horizon bleed into evening. "You ever think of staying somewhere?" she asked. Cain joined her, lowering himself beside her. "I tried once, built a fence, bought a mule, thought roots might feel better than road." "What happened?" "Roots don't suit a man who learned to bend in the wind." She nodded, thoughtful. "Maybe it's different for me." "It could be," he said softly. "You've got a way of making the world pause." Her gaze met his, steady, searching. "Would you stay if I asked?" He looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had walked through fire and come out gentler, not colder. "Maybe," he said, "but not because you asked." "Why then?" "Because for the first time I don't feel like running." Her breath caught. She turned toward him, and this time, when their lips met, it wasn't desperation or need. It was something slow, certain. The ache of two lives finding their quiet in each other. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Maybe this is what peace looks like." Cain smiled. "You're looking at it, darling. Dust, firelight, and a heartbeat that ain't afraid any more." They stayed there as the stars rose. The same stars that had watched every outlaw, every lost soul before them. The wind sang low through the windmill, a song older than both of them. If this story has touched that quiet part of you that still believes in second chances, keep riding beside them. The night will test their peace, and love always has one more fire to walk through beneath the western sky. The wind carried their laughter across the empty land, a promise written in dust and starlight, fragile, real, and still becoming. The next morning came with silence, the kind that feels like waiting. The windmill had stopped turning, and even the birds stayed low. The desert stretched empty in every direction, pale and still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Cain Ellery stood at the doorway of the old ranch house, watching the horizon. His instincts, the ones that had kept him alive longer than luck should allow, were awake again. Something was wrong. Josie Marlowe stepped out behind him, her hair loose, her voice still soft from sleep. "You look like a man reading bad weather." He nodded toward the ridge. "Smoke, maybe 2 miles off." She followed his gaze. A thin line of grey rose into the sky. "Could be travelers. Could be trouble," she sighed. "Out here, it's always one of the two." They packed quickly. The warmth of last night, that fragile, stolen peace, slipped behind them like the ghost of a song. As they mounted up, Josie reached for his arm. "Cain, whatever comes, I'm not running anymore." He looked at her, steady and proud. "Then we'll stand together." They rode north, the smoke drawing closer until the air carried the smell of burnt wood and something worse. Gunpowder, recent and bitter. At the crest of a ridge, they saw the wreck of a wagon, overturned in the sand. Buzzards wheeled low. Cain dismounted, scanning the ground. "Two dead," he said. "But look here. 3 sets of tracks heading west." "Survivors?" "Or the ones who made them dead." Josie knelt beside one of the bodies, an older man, his coat torn open, a badge still pinned to the chest. "Lawman," she murmured. Cain's jaw tightened. "Then whoever did this won't want us finding them." A sound broke the stillness. A horse neighing somewhere behind the wreck. Cain motioned for Josie to stay back and moved toward it, slow, careful. The horse wasn't alone. A boy, maybe 17, sat half-hidden in the brush, a rifle clutched too tight. His eyes were wide and wild. Cain raised a hand. "Easy, son. We ain't here to finish what started." The boy's voice cracked. "You with them?" "No, we're just passing through." The boy hesitated, then lowered the rifle an inch. "They came at dawn," he said. "Took my pa's badge and our supplies. Said they were heading for the border." Josie stepped closer. "How many?" "3, maybe 4. Cain exchanged a look with her. The numbers matched too well. Reeves's men, the ones who'd fled Esperanza after their leader fell. "Did they say where exactly they were going?" Cain asked. The boy nodded. "Talked about a canyon, somewhere south of the old mines. Said the law wouldn't follow them there." Cain straightened. "They'll be armed and desperate." Josie's eyes hardened. "Then they'll keep killing unless someone stops them." The boy looked between them, uncertain. "You're not law." Cain's voice was low, but sure. "No. But I've been what needs doing before." They helped bury the boy's father and left him the last of their water. As they rode away, the sun beat down harder, turning the sand to mirrors. The world shimmered, alive, cruel, endless. For hours they said nothing. Then Josie broke the silence. "You don't owe these men anything, Cain." He didn't look at her. "Maybe not. But the desert has rules. You spill blood without reason. It remembers." She studied him, seeing something new. Not the outlaw, not the guide, but the man who carried justice like a scar. "You're doing this for him," she said softly. "The boy." "For everyone who didn't get a chance to stop running," he replied. By sundown, they reached the canyon, a jagged scar cutting deep into the earth. Smoke curled faintly from below. Voices carried on the wind. Cain tied his horse and checked his gun. "We go down quiet," he said. Josie touched his arm. "Cain, if this ends bad—" He cut her off with a small smile. "Then it ends honest." They crept down the slope, moving from shadow to shadow. The canyon floor opened wide, a hollow campfire burning near the rocks. 3 men sat around it, dirty, mean, drunk on stolen whiskey. Cain's voice was barely a whisper. "You take the one on the left." Josie nodded. Her hand didn't shake. The first shot was his, clean, fast, final. The second came from her, striking true. The last man dove for cover, firing wild, shouting curses that turned to echoes. Cain moved before the smoke cleared. One more flash, one more echo. Then it was over. Silence again, the kind that left nothing standing. Josie's breath came hard. "It's done," she said. Cain looked at the dead, the firelight flickering across their faces. No, he said softly. It's finished. There's a difference. She stepped closer, touched his hand. He didn't pull away. Then maybe now the desert can forget. He met her eyes, tired, tender. If it forgets, it's because of you. Above them, the sky turned violet, the first stars bleeding through. The fire burned lower, throwing long shadows across the canyon floor. If this story has found the place in you that remembers mercy even when the world forgets it, stay close. The night still has one more truth to tell, and love has one last test beneath the western moon. The wind swept down through the canyon, carrying with it the last smoke of the dead and the first breath of something like peace. The canyon slept beneath a bruised moon. Ashes glowed faintly where the fire had died, and the air carried that hollow stillness that follows after violence, the silence that makes every heartbeat sound like confession. Cain Ellery sat on a rock ledge, hat beside him, elbows on his knees. He'd cleaned his gun, wiped his hands, but the blood still clung somewhere he couldn't reach. Some stains aren't on the skin. Josie Marlowe moved through the shadows, gathering their things. She'd stopped shaking hours ago, though her eyes still held the storm. "You didn't have to kill them all," she said quietly. "Yes, I did." Her voice trembled. "They were already dying." Cain looked up, moonlight catching the edge of his face. Hard, hollow, human. "Then I gave the desert what it was already asking for." Josie's breath caught. "You sound like you believe that." "I do," he said. "It's the only way I can keep believing in anything else." She crouched beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You talk like a man who's still paying for something." He exhaled slowly. "Maybe I am." "What was her name?" she asked, not accusing, just gentle. His jaw tightened. "Clara." The name left his mouth like a prayer that hadn't been said in years. "She was a healer, back when I thought I could be saved." Josie's fingers brushed his sleeve. "What happened?" "She patched up a bullet I earned. The man who shot me came looking again. This time I shot back, but Clara was between us." Her hand stilled. "You blamed yourself." "I stopped blaming myself the day I realized I still saw her every time I closed my eyes." Josie's eyes softened. "That's not guilt, Cain. That's love refusing to die ugly." He looked at her, something unspoken sparking behind the weariness. "And you? Who haunts you when you close yours?" She smiled, fragile but fierce. "Nobody anymore. You took their place." The desert breathed around them, a whisper through stone, a sigh through sage. Somewhere far off, a coyote cried once and was quiet again. Cain rose. "We should move before dawn. The canyon will flood when the rains come." Josie stood too. "Where will we go?" He looked south. "There's a river near San Cristobal. Water, shade, maybe enough quiet to hear ourselves think." She nodded, though her voice was low. "And after that?" He glanced at her. "After that, we stop wondering what comes after." They packed in silence. When they mounted up, the horizon was already silvering with the first trace of dawn. As they rode out of the canyon, the wind lifted Josie's hair, scattering it like smoke. She looked back once, watching the fire pit fade into distance. "That was the last of them," she said. "Every man who wanted me dead." Cain's voice was quiet. Then live. It's the only thing that'll ever make it mean something. She looked at him. A long, searching look that reached the parts of him he didn't show anyone. You make it sound easy. It ain't, he said. But it's worth it. They rode until the ground leveled out and the first light broke free. The desert glowed gold, endless and new. Josie drew in a breath, the kind that feels like the first one in years. When they stopped near a dry stream bed, Cain dismounted and took her hand. "You asked me once what peace looks like," he said. "I remember." He smiled, slow, worn, but real. "It looks like this, dust on our boots, no one chasing. And someone worth waking up beside." Josie laughed softly. "You sure you're not a poet?" "Only when I'm near you." For a moment the world went quiet again, not the silence of death, but of rest. The kind of stillness that means the worst is behind you, even if the road ahead stays long. She leaned against him, head on his shoulder. "So this is the part where the story ends?" "Not yet," Cain said. "Endings are too easy. What comes next? That's the hard part." Her eyes lifted to his. "Then we ride it together." He nodded, his thumb brushing the back of her hand. Together. The sun climbed higher, spilling over them in warmth that felt earned. The shadows stretched long behind, and with them the ghosts faded, smaller with every mile. If this story has touched a part of you that remembers loss but still believes in love's return, ride a little longer with them. The desert hasn't spoken its final word, and the dawn still owes them one last promise beneath the western sky. The wind carried their laughter forward this time, not back, toward the horizon, toward the sound of river water waiting to meet their names. The river found them by midday, a slow, winding vein of silver cutting through red rock and silence. It wasn't wide, but it was alive, and after so many miles of dust, that was enough. Cain Ellery led his horse to the water's edge and let the reins fall loose. The animal drank deep, snorting with relief. He crouched, cupping water in his hands, watching it slide through his fingers like time that didn't belong to him anymore. Josie Marlowe knelt beside him. She dipped her scarf into the river and pressed it against her neck, sighing at the cool. The sound was small, but it carried. A sound that said, "We made it." "You ever think we'd see this?" she asked. Cain smiled faintly. "Didn't dare to." "Why not?" "Because when you start hoping too early, the desert listens, and it gets jealous." She laughed softly. "Then let's whisper our hope. Maybe it won't hear." They sat together on the riverbank, boots half buried in the wet sand. The air smelled of sage and promise. The wind had lost its edge. It only moved to remind them they were still breathing. Josie reached for the tin cup and filled it, handing it to him. "To the end of running," she said. He took it, their fingers brushing. "To what comes after," he answered. They drank. And for the first time, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was full of everything they didn't need to say. After a while, Josie stood and looked down the river toward the line of cottonwoods that marked the horizon. "There's a small town beyond those trees. Maybe I could start something there. A place for travelers. Somewhere quiet." Cain rose too, brushing dust from his coat. "You'd make a good home for folks who've lost one." She turned to him. "And you? You'll ride on?" He hesitated. That's what I've always done. Always doesn't have to mean forever. Her voice was soft, but the words struck true. He looked at her then, really looked, and realized the road behind them didn't pull anymore. The ghosts had stopped walking in his shadow. He stepped closer. If I stayed, he said slowly, I wouldn't know what to do with peace. She smiled. Then you learn, with me. The sunlight caught her hair, turned it gold. He reached out, tracing a single strand with a finger calloused from years of fight. You sure about this, Josie? I was sure the day I found you by that fire, she said. The rest was just proof. He laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from someplace deeper than joy, from relief. You make it sound easy. Nothing worth keeping ever is. He leaned in then, and the world seemed to hold still. Their kiss was quiet, steady, not born of fear or need this time, but belonging. The river murmured beside them, and the wind carried the scent of wet earth and wildflowers that hadn't bloomed in years. When they parted, Cain rested his forehead against hers. Guess I'm not a preacher anymore, he said. Josie smiled. No, you're a man who came back to the living. The sun sank lower, shadows stretching long across the water. A hawk wheeled high above, circling the canyon like a final blessing. Cain took her hand. You name the place, and I'll build the fence. Then we'll call it Esperanza, she whispered, because hope deserves one good ending. He nodded. It does. They stood there until the light turned amber, the river catching fire from the dying sun. Somewhere far behind them, the desert exhaled, not in anger this time, but in surrender. Josie leaned her head against his shoulder. So this is it, she said. Cain smiled, his voice low as a prayer. No, darling, this is where it begins. The wind rose again, soft and warm, carrying the scent of rain that would finally fall. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this western fire keeps burning for you. And as the night settled over the river, Cain Ellery and Josie Marlowe stood beneath the wide, forgiving sky. Two hearts no longer running, their story written in dust, in stars, and in love that finally found its way home.